She was dismissed as just another civilian contractor, making coffee runs and organizing paperwork. But when she casually mentioned spotting hostile reconnaissance 4 miles beyond the perimeter, the entire command center fell into stunned silence. What could a simple mail clerk possibly know about enemy tactics that had escaped the notice of trained intelligence officers equipped with the most advanced surveillance technology? The assumption that mundane office work equated to incompetence was about to be shattered in the most extraordinary way possible. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. What made this observation so impossible? Here was someone whose daily routine involved nothing more challenging than alphabetizing correspondence and delivering messages, yet she had identified a threat that elite analysts had completely missed. The psychological disconnect was staggering. How could someone relegated to the most basic administrative duties possess the kind of tactical awareness that required years of specialized training? It challenged every preconceived notion about competence, expertise, and the dangerous habit of judging capability by job title alone. The dismissive laughter still echoed through the briefing room. "Mail girl thinks she's an intelligence analyst," someone had sneered, the words dripping with condescension. Yet beneath that mockery lay an uncomfortable tension, a nagging doubt that perhaps they had overlooked something crucial. Then came the verification that would transform skepticism into something approaching fear. "Satellite confirms hostile movement at grid coordinates she specified," whispered the communications officer, his voice barely audible but carrying implications that sent shivers through the room. The question hung heavy in the air, unspoken but unmistakable in its urgency. Who was this woman, really? Forward Operating Base Sentinel, positioned in the hostile terrain of eastern Syria, served as a critical intelligence hub for coalition forces operating in the region. The base functioned as a nerve center, where information flowed like blood through arteries, connecting field operations with command structures thousands of miles away. Every piece of data, every communication, every report passed through this facility before reaching decision-makers who held the power to alter the course of military operations across multiple theaters. The administrative section of FOB Sentinel operated with military precision despite being staffed primarily by civilian contractors. These individuals handled the unglamorous but essential work of maintaining communication lines, processing paperwork, and ensuring that the endless stream of bureaucratic requirements was met. It was into this environment of controlled chaos and routine efficiency that Elena Rodriguez had arrived 6 months earlier. Elena appeared utterly unremarkable in every conceivable way. At 28 years old, she possessed the kind of forgettable features that allowed her to blend seamlessly into any crowd. Her dark hair was perpetually pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her civilian contractor uniform hung loosely on her slight frame. She spoke little, moved quietly through the corridors, and performed her duties with a methodical precision that drew no attention whatsoever. Her official role was mail distribution specialist, a position that essentially made her invisible to the military personnel who dominated base operations. Every morning, she would arrive at the communications center before dawn, sort through hundreds of pieces of correspondence, organize supply requisitions, and ensure that critical messages reached their intended recipients. The work was tedious, repetitive, and considered so mundane that most personnel barely acknowledged her presence. The power dynamics within FOB Sentinel were rigidly defined and brutally enforced. At the apex stood Colonel Marcus Thompson, a decorated career officer whose authority was absolute and unquestioned. Below him, a hierarchy of intelligence analysts, operations officers, and senior enlisted personnel maintained the complex machinery of modern warfare. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Blake led the intelligence division, her reputation built on years of successful threat assessment and strategic analysis. Among the mid-level personnel, Captain Derek Morrison commanded respect through a combination of aggressive competence and barely contained arrogance. A former Marine reconnaissance specialist, Morrison had transitioned to intelligence work with the swagger of someone accustomed to being the most dangerous person in any room. His circle of followers included Staff Sergeant Williams, a signals intelligence specialist who worshipped Morrison's every word, and Corporal Jackson, whose technical expertise was matched only by his eagerness to please his superiors. Elena's daily routine had become as predictable as clockwork. She would arrive at the mail distribution center at 0530 hours, spend the mornings sorting correspondence by priority and destination, and dedicate her afternoons to organizing supply requests and personnel files. Her workspace was a cramped corner office filled with filing cabinets, sorting bins, and the constant hum of communications equipment from the adjacent intelligence center. What set Elena apart was not her efficiency, though she was remarkably thorough, but rather her peculiar habit of studying everything that passed through her hands with unusual intensity. While other administrators might glance briefly at addresses and routing information, Elena seemed to absorb every detail, every piece of information, as if building some internal map of the base's operations. Her colleagues in the administrative section had grown accustomed to her quiet presence. Maria Santos, the supply coordinator, appreciated Elena's reliability, but found her intensity somewhat unsettling. "She reads everything like it contains state secrets," Maria had confided to other staff members. "Even mundane supply requests get her full attention." The military personnel treated Elena with the casual dismissiveness reserved for civilian support staff. To them, she represented the bureaucratic machinery that kept operations running, but held no real importance in the serious business of warfare. Morrison, in particular, seemed to take pleasure in emphasizing the gulf between his role and hers, often making pointed comments about paper pushers and desk jockeys whenever Elena was within earshot. Elena's behavioral patterns were subtle, but consistent. She possessed an almost supernatural awareness of her surroundings, noting changes in routine, shifts in personnel, and variations in communication patterns that others overlooked entirely. When new intelligence reports arrived, she would process them with mechanical efficiency while somehow managing to absorb their contents. Her photographic memory allowed her to recall conversations, documents, and operational details with startling accuracy. The environmental tension within FOB Sentinel was a constant, oppressive presence. Located in a region where threats could materialize without warning, every person on the base lived with the knowledge that their safety depended on the vigilance of those charged with detecting danger before it arrived. The intelligence section worked around the clock, analyzing satellite imagery, intercepting communications, and piecing together the constantly shifting puzzle of enemy movements. Elena's habit of wearing reading glasses, despite having perfect vision, had become something of a running joke among the staff. The oversized frames gave her an owlish appearance that reinforced perceptions of her as a harmless academic type rather than someone with any practical understanding of military operations. What they didn't realize was that those glasses contained subtle modifications that enhanced her ability to read documents from unusual angles and distances. The social hierarchy on base was unforgiving and absolute. Officers socialized with other officers. Enlisted personnel maintained their own social circles, and civilian contractors existed in a separate, largely ignored category. Elena's attempts to engage in casual conversation were met with polite but distant responses that made clear her position in the pecking order. Captain Morrison's attitude toward Elena had evolved from initial indifference to active contempt. He seemed personally offended by her presence in what he considered a serious military environment, frequently making comments about the inappropriateness of having civilians playing soldier in sensitive areas. His criticism had grown more pointed in recent weeks, particularly after Elena had asked several questions about communication protocols that he deemed inappropriate for someone in her position. The breaking point had been building for weeks. Morrison's frustration with what he perceived as Elena's overreach had reached a crescendo during a routine staff meeting where she had corrected a minor error in a supply manifest. The correction was accurate and saved the base from a potentially costly mistake, but Morrison saw it as an example of civilian contractors overstepping their bounds. Lieutenant Commander Blake's perspective on Elena was more nuanced. As head of intelligence, Blake had noticed Elena's unusual attention to detail and her uncanny ability to spot inconsistencies in paperwork that others missed. However, Blake also recognized the importance of maintaining clear boundaries between civilian support staff and military intelligence operations. The base's communications center served as the heart of all information flow, a sophisticated network of computers, satellites, and communication equipment that connected FOB Sentinel to the broader coalition intelligence network. Elena's position in the mail distribution office provided her with an overview of this system that few others possessed, allowing her to observe patterns and connections that might escape the notice of specialists focused on their particular areas of expertise. Elena's background remained largely mysterious to her colleagues, Her personnel file contained the standard information required for security clearance, but little personal detail. She had listed her previous employment as research analyst for a private consulting firm, a description vague enough to raise no suspicions while revealing nothing of substance. Her educational background showed degrees in linguistics and international relations, credentials that seemed almost overqualified for her current position. The subtle hints of Elena's deeper capabilities occasionally surfaced in unexpected ways. Her proficiency with languages had become apparent when she effortlessly translated documents written in Arabic, Farsi, and Russian without using translation software. When questioned about these skills, she had simply explained that her previous research work had required multilingual capabilities, an explanation that satisfied casual curiosity while revealing nothing significant. Her weapon familiarization, demonstrated during mandatory safety training, had surprised the firearms instructor. Elena handled various small arms with a competence that suggested extensive prior experience, yet she deflected questions about her background with self-deprecating comments about target shooting as a hobby. The instructor noted her performance but thought little of it, assuming that many Americans had recreational shooting experience. The environmental pressures within FOB Sentinel created a constant undercurrent of tension that affected everyone differently. Elena seemed remarkably immune to the stress that visibly affected other civilian contractors, maintaining her calm demeanor even during alerts and heightened security conditions. This composure, which should have been impressive, instead reinforced perceptions of her as someone too naive to understand the genuine dangers surrounding them. Morrison's group had developed an increasingly hostile attitude toward Elena's presence in sensitive areas. Staff Sergeant Williams had begun making pointed comments about security risks posed by civilian contractors with access to classified information. Corporal Jackson, eager to curry favor with his superiors, had started questioning Elena's movements around the base and reporting on her activities with an enthusiasm that bordered on harassment. The micro-tensions within the intelligence section were reaching a breaking point. Elena's innocent questions about operational procedures were being interpreted as inappropriate curiosity. Her habit of staying late to complete her work was seen as an attempt to access information beyond her clearance level. Even her efficiency was being viewed with suspicion, as if competence itself was somehow threatening. Elena's awareness of these growing suspicions was evident in her body language, though she continued to perform her duties with unwavering professionalism. She had begun to limit her interactions with military personnel, focusing on her administrative tasks while maintaining the kind of low profile that had served her well throughout her tenure on base. The stage was being set for a confrontation that would expose truths none of them were prepared to handle. Elena's calm acceptance of the growing hostility suggested either remarkable resilience or the confidence of someone who knew far more about her own capabilities than she was revealing. The question that hung in the air, unspoken but increasingly urgent, was whether the base personnel were dealing with a harmless civilian administrator or something far more significant disguised in mundane clothing. The intelligence briefing room at FOB Sentinel buzzed with the controlled energy of professionals analyzing threats that could materialize into violence without warning. Banks of monitors displayed satellite feeds, communication intercepts, and tactical maps that painted a comprehensive picture of the surrounding region. This morning's session promised to be routine, another in the endless series of threat assessments that formed the backbone of base security. Captain Morrison commanded the room with characteristic authority, his presence dominating the space as he prepared to brief senior staff on the latest intelligence developments. Lieutenant Commander Blake occupied her usual position at the analysis station, surrounded by the technological tools that had made her reputation as one of the military's most effective intelligence officers. The assembled personnel represented the cream of coalition intelligence capabilities, individuals trained to detect and counter threats that could emerge from the complex political and military landscape of the region. Elena's presence in the room was both routine and anomalous. Her official duties required her to deliver classified correspondence and collect outgoing communications, tasks that granted her brief but regular access to the intelligence briefings. Most personnel had grown accustomed to her quiet efficiency, treating her as part of the furniture rather than a participant in the serious business of warfare. The morning briefing focused on recent developments in the region, including increased chatter among known hostile groups and subtle shifts in the patterns of civilian movement that might indicate preparation for offensive operations. Morrison's analysis was thorough and professional, demonstrating the kind of tactical thinking that had earned him his reputation. The satellite imagery showed the usual collection of vehicles, personnel, and infrastructure that characterized the complex operational environment surrounding the base. Elena completed her administrative duties and prepared to leave when something on the main display monitor caught her attention. The satellite feed showed a section of terrain approximately 4 miles northeast of the base, an area that had been classified as low priority due to its apparent lack of strategic value. The image quality was excellent, revealing details down to individual vehicles and personnel movements. What Elena observed in that imagery would have been invisible to most viewers. Even trained analysts focused on obvious threats. Years of specialized training had taught her to recognize patterns that existed at the intersection of geography, psychology, and tactical doctrine. The positioning of vehicles, the movement patterns of personnel, and the timing of activities created a signature that spoke to her with startling clarity. The reconnaissance pattern was textbook perfect, executed with a sophistication that suggested highly trained operatives rather than the typical insurgent groups that dominated intelligence briefings. Vehicle positions were optimized for observation while maintaining escape routes. Personnel movements followed a rotation schedule that provided continuous surveillance coverage, while avoiding the kind of obvious static positioning that would attract attention from aerial observation. Elena's training had taught her to recognize the subtle indicators that distinguished professional military reconnaissance from civilian activity or random insurgent movement. The spacing between observation posts, the use of natural concealment, and the coordination of movements all pointed to an operation planned and executed by individuals with advanced tactical training. The psychological profile of the operation was equally revealing. The choice of observation points demonstrated intimate knowledge of FOB Sentinel's defensive capabilities and blind spots. The timing of movements suggested coordination with base activity schedules, indicating that the reconnaissance team possessed detailed intelligence about coalition operations. This was not opportunistic observation, but rather systematic intelligence gathering conducted by professionals. Elena found herself facing a moment of profound decision. Her analysis was based on capabilities and knowledge that she was not supposed to possess, insights that would immediately raise questions about her background and true qualifications. Speaking up would expose her to scrutiny that could unravel the carefully constructed persona she had maintained for months. The weight of potential consequences pressed down on her as she considered her options. Remaining silent would preserve her cover but potentially leave the base vulnerable to attack. The reconnaissance pattern she had identified suggested preparation for a significant operation, possibly a coordinated assault or infiltration attempt. The lives of everyone on FOB Sentinel could depend on the intelligence she alone had detected. Elena's decision crystallized with startling clarity. Professional obligations trumped personal security considerations. The safety of coalition personnel outweighed the risks to her own position. With characteristic calm, she approached the briefing area where Morrison was concluding his presentation. "Excuse me, Captain," Elena said, her voice carrying the deferential tone expected from civilian support staff. "I believe there may be hostile reconnaissance activity approximately 4 miles northeast of our position." The room fell silent with the sudden completeness of a switched-off radio. Morrison's expression shifted from confusion to irritation as he processed the interruption. The assembled intelligence professionals turned their attention to the mail clerk, who had just offered tactical analysis during a classified briefing. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" Morrison's voice carried a dangerous edge that warned of impending explosion. The presumption of a civilian contractor offering military analysis was so far outside normal protocol that it bordered on the absurd. Elena maintained her composure despite the hostile attention now focused on her. The satellite imagery shows what appears to be a coordinated reconnaissance operation. Vehicle positioning, personnel movement patterns, and timing all suggest professional military surveillance rather than random civilian activity. Lieutenant Commander Blake leaned forward, her analyst's instincts overriding social protocol. "What specifically are you seeing that supports that assessment?" Elena moved toward the main display, her movements deliberate and professional. The vehicles are positioned at optimal observation points that provide clear lines of sight to our perimeter while maintaining multiple escape routes. Personnel rotation follows a pattern that ensures continuous coverage without creating static positions vulnerable to counter-surveillance. Morrison's face had darkened to an alarming shade of red. "Are you seriously attempting to provide tactical analysis? You sort mail for a living." Your job is to deliver paperwork, not to play intelligence analyst." The contempt in Morrison's voice was unmistakable, but Elena continued her explanation with unshakable calm. "The coordination between observation posts indicates sophisticated communication capability. The timing of movements suggests detailed knowledge of our operational schedule. This is professional reconnaissance, not opportunistic observation." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Staff Sergeant Williams jumped to support his commanding officer. "This is completely inappropriate. Civilian contractors don't have the training or clearance to make these kinds of assessments. She's overstepping her authority in a classified briefing." Elena's response carried a quiet authority that seemed to emerge from nowhere. "I understand the chain of command, Sergeant. However, threat identification is everyone's responsibility regardless of their primary duties. The pattern I'm observing suggests immediate danger to base security." Lieutenant Commander Blake found herself torn between protocol and the nagging sense that Elena's observations contain substance worth investigating. "Can you be more specific about what you're seeing? What training gives you the background to make these assessments?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Elena's answer would determine whether her observations received serious consideration or whether she would be dismissed from the briefing in disgrace. The gathered personnel waited for her response, their skepticism evident but tinged with curiosity about this unexpected development. "Pattern recognition," Elena replied simply. "The fundamentals of surveillance detection are consistent regardless of the specific operational environment. What I'm observing follows established reconnaissance protocols." Morrison's patience finally snapped. "This is ridiculous. We have trained intelligence professionals with years of experience analyzing these threats. We don't need input from someone whose job is organizing office supplies. This is a serious military operation, not a classroom exercise." The dismissal was complete and final, delivered with the kind of institutional authority that brooked no argument. Elena nodded acceptance of the rebuke, but her gaze remained fixed on the satellite display, where the pattern she had identified continued to unfold with methodical precision. "I understand, sir," she replied quietly. "I'll return to my duties." As Elena prepared to leave, Lieutenant Commander Blake made a decision that would alter the trajectory of everything that followed. "Wait, let's verify what you're seeing. Corporal Jackson, can you enhance the northeastern sector and track vehicle movements over the past 6 hours? Morrison's objection was immediate and forceful. "Commander, this is highly irregular. Pattern recognition requires understanding both the capabilities and psychology of potential threats." The room buzzed with activity as the intelligence team scrambled to assess the implications of Elena's discovery. Communication channels crackled with urgent reports to higher command levels. Alert statuses were elevated as the base prepared for potential incoming threats. Through it all, Elena maintained her position at the display screens, her observations continuing to guide the developing tactical response. Her transformation from invisible support staff to critical intelligence asset had occurred so rapidly that the personnel around her struggled to process the change. Morrison's earlier dismissiveness had evaporated, replaced by a grudging recognition that everything he thought he knew about Elena Rodriguez was fundamentally wrong. The question that echoed through the briefing room, unspoken but impossible to ignore, was deceptively simple. Who was this woman really? The silence that followed Elena's tactical assessment stretched beyond uncomfortable into the realm of the surreal. Captain Morrison stared at the enhanced satellite imagery with the expression of someone whose fundamental understanding of reality had just been challenged. The reconnaissance pattern Elena had identified was not only accurate, but sophisticated beyond anything their standard threat assessment protocols had detected. Lieutenant Commander Blake broke the silence with the kind of question that carried implications none of them were prepared to handle. "Ms. Rodriguez, what specific training gives you the capability to identify professional military reconnaissance patterns?" Elena's response came with a calmness that seemed inappropriate for someone who had just upended an entire intelligence briefing. "Pattern analysis was part of my previous research work. The fundamentals remain consistent across different applications." Morrison's recovery from his initial shock manifested as aggressive skepticism. "Research work? What kind of research involves military tactical analysis? Your personnel file lists you as working for a consulting firm." The evasiveness of Elena's answer only deepened the mystery surrounding her background. Strategic analysis consulting. Government contracts occasionally required understanding of various operational methodologies. Staff Sergeant Williams, emboldened by his commander's confrontational approach, pressed for more specific information. That's pretty vague. What government agency? What kind of contracts? Who was your security sponsor? Elena's slight hesitation before responding was the first crack in her composed facade that anyone had observed. Much of that work was classified. I'm limited in what I can discuss about previous assignments. The room's atmosphere had shifted from routine intelligence briefing to interrogation as the assembled personnel grappled with the implications of Elena's capabilities. Corporal Jackson, still focused on the satellite displays, provided unwelcome confirmation of Elena's analysis. Ma'am, I'm tracking coordinated movement between multiple observation posts. The timing intervals suggest professional military communication protocols. This is definitely not random civilian activity. Lieutenant Commander Blake found herself confronting a situation that challenged every protocol in her operational manual. A civilian contractor with unexplained analytical capabilities had identified a sophisticated threat that her trained intelligence team had completely overlooked. The professional implications were staggering. Ms. Rodriguez, I need you to walk me through exactly what you're seeing, detail by detail. Assume I know nothing about reconnaissance patterns. Elena approached the main display with movements that carried subtle authority despite her civilian clothes and deferential demeanor. Her explanation revealed depth of knowledge that extended far beyond casual familiarity with military concepts. Primary observation post is positioned on elevated terrain with clear sight lines to our main gate and vehicle staging areas. Secondary posts are placed to cover blind spots from the primary position while maintaining overlapping fields of observation. The positioning creates redundant coverage that ensures continuous surveillance even if one post is compromised. Morrison's interruption carried desperate edge of someone clinging to authority in the face of mounting evidence of his inadequacy. Anyone can identify high ground in sight lines. That doesn't prove professional military involvement. Elena's response demonstrated patience that seemed almost maternal in its tolerance of Morrison's defensive reactions. The sophistication lies in the coordination and timing. Each post maintains active observation for exactly 90-minute intervals before rotating personnel. The rotation schedule ensures someone is always watching while preventing the kind of static positioning that would be vulnerable to counter-surveillance. Corporal Jackson's continued analysis provided real-time confirmation of Elena's observations. She's right about the timing. I'm seeing personnel changes at each position following a precise schedule. The coordination is too exact to be coincidental. Lieutenant Commander Blake's growing alarm was evident in her increasingly urgent questions. What does this level of reconnaissance typically precede? What should we be preparing for? Yelena's answer carried weight that suggested intimate familiarity with the tactical implications of what they were observing. Coordinated reconnaissance of this sophistication usually precedes major operations, either a direct assault or infiltration attempt. The thoroughness suggests they're planning something significant. Morrison's worldview continued to crumble as the implications of Elena's analysis became undeniable. How long would this kind of operation take to plan? How much time do we have? Elena's tactical assessment revealed knowledge that extended far beyond pattern recognition into the realm of operational planning. Professional reconnaissance teams typically observe for 3 to 5 days before initiating operations. Based on the sophistication of their positioning, they've been watching us for at least 72 hours. That suggests imminent action. The briefing room erupted into controlled chaos as the intelligence team scrambled to respond to the identified threat. Communication channels buzzed with reports to higher command levels. Alert protocols activated throughout the base as personnel prepared for potential hostile action. Through the urgent activity, Elena maintained her position at the display screens, her continued observations guiding the developing tactical response. Her transformation from invisible support staff to critical intelligence asset had occurred so rapidly that the military personnel struggled to process the fundamental shift in her status. Morrison found himself in the unprecedented position of having to defer to the analytical capabilities of someone he had systematically dismissed and marginalized. The psychological adjustment was proving more difficult than accepting the tactical reality of the threat Elena had identified. "I need to understand," Morrison said, his voice stripped of its earlier arrogance. What kind of consulting work gives someone this level of tactical knowledge? This isn't academic theory. You're describing real-world operational experience. Elena's response carried the first hint of something harder beneath her mild administrative facade. Some research requires field verification. Understanding theoretical concepts isn't sufficient when lives depend on accurate analysis. Lieutenant Commander Blake's analyst instincts were screaming that Elena's background contained elements far more significant than her personnel file suggested. Ms. Rodriguez, I need to ask directly, do you have military experience that's not reflected in your official documentation? The question hung in the air with implications that extended far beyond simple curiosity. Elena's answer would determine whether she remained a mysterious civilian contractor or revealed herself as something entirely different. Not traditional military service, Elena replied carefully, but operational experience with similar analytical requirements. Morrison's frustration with Elena's evasive responses finally boiled over. That's not an answer. Operational experience with what? For whom? What agency? What mission parameters? Elena's calm began to show signs of strain under the aggressive questioning. Captain, I understand your concerns about my background. However, my previous work involved classification levels that restrict what I can discuss without proper clearance verification. The impasse that followed was broken by an urgent communication from base security. Intelligence section. We have confirmed hostile movement 4 miles northeast. Request immediate tactical assessment for defensive positioning. Lieutenant Commander Blake turned to Elena with a question that acknowledged the fundamental shift in their relationship. What do you recommend for defensive preparations based on what you're observing? Elena's response revealed knowledge that extended deep into tactical doctrine and defensive strategy. Primary threat is likely infiltration rather than direct assault. The reconnaissance pattern suggests they're mapping our security procedures rather than identifying targets for bombardment. I recommend enhanced perimeter patrols with emphasis on detection rather than engagement. Morrison's acceptance of Elena's tactical recommendations represented complete reversal of his earlier dismissive attitude. How do you know they're planning infiltration rather than assault? What indicators support that assessment? Elena's explanation demonstrated understanding of enemy psychology and tactical doctrine that few intelligence professionals possessed. Assault reconnaissance focuses on defensive positions, weapon emplacements, and structural vulnerabilities. What they're observing is personnel movement patterns, shift changes, and routine activities. They're mapping our behavior, not our defenses. The accuracy of Elena's assessment was confirmed minutes later when enhanced satellite analysis revealed sophisticated surveillance equipment positioned to monitor base personnel rather than defensive installations. The hostile reconnaissance team was indeed studying coalition behavior patterns, rather than preparing for direct attack. Colonel Thompson's arrival in the briefing room brought command authority to the situation, while adding another layer of complexity to Elena's mysterious position. I want a full briefing on this threat identification. Who made the initial assessment? Morrison's response carried none of his usual confident authority. Ms. Onorbayo Rodriguez from mail distribution identified the reconnaissance pattern, sir. Her analysis has been confirmed by satellite verification. Colonel Thompson's expression shifted from professional interest to sharp focus as he processed the implications of Morrison's report. A civilian contractor identified a sophisticated threat that our intelligence section missed? Elena stepped forward with the deferential posture expected when addressing senior command officers. Sir, I observed patterns that suggested coordinated surveillance. The intelligence section's verification confirmed the accuracy of those observations. Colonel Thompson's decades of military experience had taught him to recognize when situations contained elements beyond their apparent scope. Ms. Rodriguez, what qualifies you to identify military reconnaissance patterns? Elena's answer maintained her carefully constructed facade while hinting at depths that remained concealed. Analytical training focused on pattern recognition, sir. Previous work required understanding of various surveillance methodologies. The colonel's follow-up question carried weight that suggested growing suspicion about Elena's true background. What previous work? Who was your employer? What kind of analytical training? Elena's slight hesitation before responding was barely perceptible, but Colonel Thompson's trained eye caught the momentary uncertainty. Strategic consulting work, sir. Much of it involved classified government contracts that limit what I can discuss. Lieutenant Commander Blake's interjection provided crucial context for the developing situation. Sir, Ms. Rodriguez's tactical assessment identified not just the reconnaissance but predicted infiltration as the likely objective. Her analysis has proven accurate in every detail. Colonel Thompson's response revealed the kind of tactical thinking that had earned him command authority. If infiltration is the objective, what's their likely target? What are they trying to achieve? Elena's answer demonstrated knowledge that extended far beyond theoretical understanding into practical operational experience. Based on their observation patterns, they're studying our communication protocols and security procedures. Most likely objective is intelligence gathering rather than sabotage or personnel targeting. Morrison found himself in the surreal position of supporting the analytical capabilities of someone he had been systematically undermining. Her assessment aligns with the surveillance equipment we've identified. They're watching our procedures, not our defenses. The colonel's decision reflected recognition that Elena's capabilities represented a critical intelligence asset regardless of her official position. Ms. Rodriguez, I'm temporarily reassigning you to Intelligence Section support. Your analytical capabilities are needed for threat assessment. Elena's acceptance of the reassignment was delivered with characteristic calm, but careful observers might have noticed relief in her expression. Yes, sir. I'll provide whatever analytical support is required. The transformation in Elena's status from dismissed civilian contractor to essential intelligence asset had occurred with stunning rapidity. Morrison's group, which had spent months marginalizing her presence, now found themselves dependent on her analytical capabilities for base security. Staff Sergeant Williams struggled to process the fundamental shift in Elena's position. Ma'am, what specific protocols should we follow for ongoing surveillance of the hostile reconnaissance team? Elena's response revealed familiarity with counter-surveillance operations that suggested extensive practical experience. Passive observation only. Active counter-surveillance would alert them to our awareness. We need to monitor their patterns without compromising our intelligence advantage. The tactical briefing that followed demonstrated Elena's comprehensive understanding of intelligence operations and threat assessment. Her recommendations for defensive positioning, communication security, and personnel protocols revealed knowledge that extended far beyond anything her official background could explain. Corporal Jackson's technical analysis continued to confirm Elena's assessments with uncomfortable precision. Ma'am, signal intercepts suggest they're using encrypted communication equipment consistent with professional military units rather than insurgent groups. Elena's response to the technical intelligence revealed understanding of enemy capabilities that few analysts possessed. Professional equipment suggests state sponsorship or advanced training. This isn't opportunistic surveillance. It's systematic intelligence gathering by trained operatives. Colonel Thompson's growing concern was evident in his increasingly urgent questions. What state sponsors operate in this region? What agencies have the capability for this kind of operation? Elena's answer carried implications that sent chills through the assembled personnel. Several regional powers maintain intelligence operations targeting coalition forces. The sophistication suggests this is state-sponsored rather than independent terrorist activity. The briefing room buzzed with urgent activity as the implications of Elena's analysis spread throughout the command structure. Communication channels crackled with reports to higher command levels. Alert statuses elevated as the base prepared for sophisticated intelligence threats rather than conventional assault. Morrison's complete reversal in attitude toward Elena was evident in his deferential approach to someone he had spent months dismissing. Ms. Rodriguez, what additional analytical support do you need to continue threat assessment? Elena's response demonstrated understanding of intelligence operations that few civilian contractors would possess. Access to signal intelligence reports and satellite imagery archives. Pattern analysis requires comprehensive data to identify developing threats. Lieutenant Commander Blake's decision to grant Elena access to classified intelligence systems represented unprecedented trust in someone whose background remained largely mysterious. I'll arrange appropriate clearance verification. Your analytical capabilities are too valuable to limit based on standard protocols. The psychological impact on Morrison was profound and devastating. His worldview, constructed around assumptions of military superiority and civilian incompetence, had been completely shattered. The woman he had systematically marginalized possessed capabilities that far exceeded his own analytical skills. Morrison's attempt to understand Elena's background carried desperate edge of someone trying to rebuild his shattered assumptions. What kind of training produces this level of tactical knowledge? Military intelligence school? CIA training programs? Foreign military exchange. Elena's continued evasiveness only deepened the mystery surrounding her true qualifications. Various professional development opportunities. Government consulting work often requires diverse analytical capabilities. Colonel Thompson's growing suspicion about Elena's background was evident in his increasingly pointed questions. Ms. Rodriguez, your analytical capabilities suggest training that extends far beyond civilian consulting work. I need clarification about your background for security purposes. Elena's response carried hints of authority that seemed inconsistent with her deferential civilian contractor persona. Sir, I understand your concerns. However, previous work involved classification levels that require verification through appropriate channels. The impasse over Elena's background was interrupted by urgent communication from Perimeter Security. Command, we have movement at multiple observation posts. Hostile surveillance team appears to be initiating Phase 2 operations. Elena's immediate response to the developing situation revealed tactical thinking that came from extensive operational experience. Phase 2 typically involves closer reconnaissance or probe attempts. Recommend immediate lockdown of sensitive areas and enhanced communication security. The speed and accuracy of Elena's tactical recommendations left no doubt about her professional competence, regardless of her mysterious background. Her suggestions for defensive measures demonstrated understanding of enemy tactics that could only come from extensive field experience. Morrison found himself implementing defensive strategies recommended by someone he had spent months treating as incompetent. The psychological adjustment was proving more challenging than the tactical requirements of the developing threat situation. Ms. Rodriguez, Morrison said, his voice stripped of its earlier arrogance, what indicators should we monitor to predict their next phase of operations? Elena's response revealed understanding of enemy psychology and operational planning that few intelligence officers possessed. Communication patterns, equipment positioning, and personnel rotation schedules. Professional operations follow predictable escalation patterns once initial reconnaissance is complete. The ongoing crisis had transformed Elena from invisible support staff to critical intelligence asset, but questions about her true background remained unanswered. Her analytical capabilities clearly extended far beyond anything her official personnel file could explain. Lieutenant Commander Blake's growing respect for Elena's capabilities was evident in her increasingly collaborative approach. What long-term implications should we consider if this represents systematic intelligence gathering by state sponsors? Elena's answer carried strategic implications that reached far beyond immediate base security. Systematic intelligence gathering typically precedes larger operational planning. This could indicate preparation for coordinated actions across multiple coalition positions. The briefing room had become a command center, focused entirely on Elena's ongoing analysis of the developing threat. Her transformation from dismissed civilian contractor to essential intelligence asset represented one of the most dramatic reversals of status anyone present had ever witnessed. Colonel Thompson's final question of the session carried weight that would determine Elena's future role in base operations. Ms. Rodriguez, are you prepared to serve as primary analyst for this developing situation? Your capabilities appear essential for our defensive planning. Elena's acceptance of the expanded role was delivered with characteristic calm, but her words carried undertones that suggested deeper purpose. Yes, sir. I'll provide whatever analytical support is required to protect coalition personnel. The session ended with Elena positioned at the primary analysis station, surrounded by the technological tools of modern intelligence gathering. Her transformation was complete, but the questions about her true background remained unanswered, creating tension that would inevitably demand resolution. The encrypted communication that arrived 3 hours after Elena's assignment to intelligence section carried classification markings that made Colonel Thompson pause mid-stride. The message originated from levels of command authority that rarely involved themselves in field operations, suggesting that Elena Rodriguez had attracted attention from quarters far beyond FOB Sentinel. Lieutenant Commander Blake's face drained of color as she processed the contents of the classified communication. Her hands trembled slightly as she handed the secure tablet to Colonel Thompson, her voice barely above a whisper when she spoke. Sir, you need to read this immediately. It's about Ms. Rodriguez. Colonel Thompson's expression shifted from professional curiosity to profound shock as he absorbed the information displayed on the secure device. The classification level was beyond anything he had expected, and the content challenged everything he thought he understood about their seemingly ordinary mail distribution specialist. The communication originated from the Defense Intelligence Agency's Special Operations Division, an organization so classified that most military personnel had never heard of its existence. The message was brief but carried implications that reverberated through every assumption they had made about Elena's background and capabilities. Subject: Elena Rodriguez, cover designation Mail Distribution Specialist, is DIA Special Operations Division Senior Intelligence Analyst on classified assignment. Subject's analytical capabilities derive from 15-year operational history, including deep cover assignments in hostile territories. Immediate tactical recommendations should be implemented without question. Command authority for current situation transfers to Subject Rodriguez effective immediately. Morrison's world collapsed entirely as the implications of the communication penetrated his consciousness. The woman he had spent months dismissing and marginalizing was not only a highly trained intelligence professional, but possessed command authority that superseded his own position in the current tactical situation. Colonel Thompson's immediate response reflected decades of military training that had taught him to adapt rapidly to changing command structures. Ms. Rodriguez, I need to speak with you privately. Immediately. Elena's calm acknowledgement of the colonel's request carried none of the deference that had characterized her previous interactions with command authority. Of course, sir. Though I believe the tactical situation requires immediate attention regardless of administrative considerations. The private conference between Colonel Thompson and Elena took place in a secure communication room isolated from the main intelligence center. The conversation that followed would reshape everyone's understanding of the operation they had been conducting for the past 6 months. Ms. Rodriguez, Colonel Thompson began, his voice carrying the kind of respect reserved for senior intelligence professionals. I've received clarification about your actual position and authority. I need to understand the scope of your mission at Fab Sentinel. Elena's response marked the first time anyone at the base had heard her speak with unguarded authority. Her voice carried confidence and command presence that had been carefully concealed beneath months of administrative anonymity. Colonel, my assignment here was twofold. Primary mission involved intelligence gathering regarding potential security vulnerabilities at forward operating bases. Secondary mission focused on evaluating personnel performance under crisis conditions. The revelation that Elena had been conducting covert assessment of base operations and personnel sent shockwaves through Colonel Thompson's understanding of their situation. How long have you been evaluating our operations? What have you determined about our security posture? Elena's comprehensive analysis revealed knowledge of base operations that extended far beyond what any mail distribution specialist could have observed. 6 months of continuous assessment. Your defensive protocols are adequate for conventional threats but vulnerable to sophisticated intelligence operations. Today's reconnaissance activity confirms those vulnerabilities. Colonel Thompson's growing realization that Elena possessed detailed knowledge of their operational weaknesses created uncomfortable awareness of how thoroughly they had been observed and evaluated. What specific vulnerabilities have you identified? Elena's tactical assessment was delivered with the clinical precision of a professional intelligence analyst addressing senior command staff. Communication security protocols are inconsistent. Personnel movement patterns are predictable. Counter-surveillance capabilities are inadequate for detecting professional intelligence operations. Administrative security is compromised by inadequate background verification procedures. The depth and accuracy of Elena's assessment left Colonel Thompson with uncomfortable awareness that their base operations had been transparent to professional observation for months. What recommendations do you have for addressing these vulnerabilities? Elena's strategic recommendations revealed understanding of intelligence operations and defensive doctrine that extended far beyond theoretical knowledge into practical operational experience. Immediate implementation of variable patrol schedules, enhanced communication encryption, systematic counter-surveillance training, and comprehensive personnel security review. Colonel Thompson's acceptance of Elena's analytical authority represented fundamental shift in the command structure of FOB Sentinel. I'll implement your recommendations immediately. What about the current reconnaissance threat? Elena's tactical analysis of the developing situation demonstrated capabilities that justified the command authority she had been granted. The hostile surveillance team is gathering intelligence for systematic compromise of coalition operations across multiple installations. This represents significant strategic threat beyond immediate base security. The implications of Elena's assessment extended far beyond FOB Sentinel to encompass broader coalition intelligence security. Colonel Thompson's growing alarm was evident in his increasingly urgent questions about the scope of the threat they were confronting. What evidence supports the assessment of broader operational compromise? How extensive is this intelligence gathering operation? Elena's response revealed access to intelligence sources and analytical capabilities that few professionals possessed. Pattern analysis indicates coordinated surveillance of multiple coalition installations across the region. Communication intercepts suggest systematic intelligence sharing between hostile surveillance teams. Colonel Thompson's realization that they were confronting systematic intelligence operation rather than isolated reconnaissance created immediate urgency for implementing defensive measures across broader operational areas. What agencies have capability for this level of coordinated intelligence operation? Elena's answer carried implications that transformed their understanding of the strategic environment they were operating within. State-sponsored intelligence services with advanced technical capabilities and extensive human intelligence networks. This level of coordination requires significant resources and sophisticated command structure. The briefing that followed Elena's revelation of her true status represented complete transformation of the tactical situation at FOB Sentinel. Morrison found himself receiving orders from someone he had systematically marginalized for months. A psychological adjustment that proved more challenging than the tactical requirements of their defensive preparations. Elena's assumption of command authority was seamless and professional, demonstrating leadership capabilities that had been carefully concealed beneath her administrative facade. Her tactical briefing revealed comprehensive understanding of enemy capabilities and defensive doctrine that impressed even experienced intelligence professionals. Immediate priorities include enhanced perimeter security, variable patrol schedules, and systematic counter-surveillance operations, Elena announced, her voice carrying command authority that brooked no argument. Communication security protocols will be upgraded to prevent intelligence compromise. Morrison's attempt to process his new relationship with Elena was evident in his deferential approach to someone he had previously treated with open contempt. "Ma'am, what specific counter-surveillance protocols should be implemented?" Elena's response demonstrated tactical knowledge that extended deep into specialized intelligence operations. Passive surveillance detection using natural cover and concealment, variable timing to disrupt enemy observation patterns, multiple decoy activities to confuse intelligence gathering efforts. Staff Sergeant Williams struggled to adapt to receiving tactical guidance from someone he had dismissed as incompetent civilian support staff. "Ma'am, what indicators should we monitor to detect compromise of our counter-surveillance activities?" Elena's comprehensive understanding of intelligence operations was evident in her detailed response. Communication pattern changes, modification of surveillance positions, adjustment of observation schedules. Professional intelligence teams adapt rapidly to counter-surveillance measures. The ongoing tactical briefing revealed Elena's extensive knowledge of enemy capabilities and defensive strategies. Her recommendations for base security represented sophisticated understanding of intelligence operations that could only derive from extensive field experience. Corporal Jackson's technical analysis continued to confirm Elena's assessments with precision that validated her analytical capabilities. "Ma'am, signal intelligence confirms coordinated communication between multiple surveillance teams across the region." Elena's response to the technical intelligence demonstrated understanding of enemy operational patterns that few analysts possessed. Coordinated communication suggests centralized command structure with systematic intelligence sharing. This confirms assessment of state-sponsored operations. Lieutenant Commander Blake's adaptation to Elena's true status was evident in her collaborative approach to someone she now recognized as a senior intelligence professional. What long-term strategic implications should we consider for broader coalition operations? Elena's strategic analysis revealed understanding of geopolitical considerations that extended far beyond tactical threat assessment. Systematic intelligence gathering suggests preparation for coordinated actions against coalition positions. Defensive preparations should consider simultaneous threats across multiple installations. The revelation of Elena's true background had transformed every relationship and assumption at FOB Sentinel, but the most profound change was evident in Morrison's complete psychological transformation. His worldview, constructed around assumptions of military superiority and civilian incompetence, had been utterly demolished. Morrison's desperate attempt to understand his fundamental misjudgment was evident in his carefully phrased questions. "Ma'am, how did I fail to recognize your professional capabilities? What indicators should I have observed?" Elena's response carried understanding rather than condemnation, demonstrating the kind of leadership that builds rather than destroys. Professional cover requires convincing portrayal of assigned role. Your observations were consistent with designed perceptions. The failure was systematic rather than personal. The psychological relief in Morrison's expression was evident, as Elena's explanation provided context for his misjudgment that preserved some measure of professional dignity. "What can I learn from this experience to improve my analytical capabilities?" Elena's mentoring response revealed leadership philosophy that emphasized development rather than punishment. Question assumptions. Verify observations. Understand that professional competence can exist in unexpected forms. The most dangerous mistake is underestimating capabilities based on appearances. The tactical situation continued to develop, as Elena's counter-surveillance measures began to reveal the full scope of the hostile intelligence operation. Enhanced monitoring capabilities detected communication patterns that confirmed systematic coordination between multiple surveillance teams. Elena's analysis of the expanding intelligence picture revealed strategic implications that extended far beyond immediate base security. Intelligence gathering operation encompasses multiple coalition installations across 3 countries. This represents systematic preparation for coordinated hostile action. Colonel Thompson's growing alarm at the strategic implications of Elena's assessment was evident in his urgent communication with higher command levels. What defensive measures can be implemented to counter systematic intelligence compromise? Elena's strategic recommendations reflected understanding of intelligence operations at the highest levels of professional capability. Coordinated counterintelligence operations across affected installations, systematic communication security enhancement, variable operational patterns to disrupt intelligence gathering effectiveness. The implementation of Elena's defensive strategies began immediately, as FOB Sentinel transformed from vulnerable observation target to sophisticated counterintelligence operation. Her tactical expertise guided every aspect of their defensive preparations. Morrison's role in implementing Elena's strategies represented complete reversal of their previous relationship dynamic. His eager compliance with her tactical guidance demonstrated profound respect that had replaced his earlier contempt. "Ma'am," Morrison reported, "perimeter security teams report successful detection of hostile surveillance positions using your recommended counter-surveillance techniques." Elena's acknowledgement of Morrison's report carried approval that validated his efforts to adapt to her leadership. "Excellent work, Captain. Continue monitoring for adaptive responses from hostile surveillance teams." The psychological transformation in Morrison was complete and permanent. His previous arrogance had been replaced by genuine humility and respect for professional competence regardless of its apparent source. The experience had fundamentally altered his approach to leadership and assessment of personnel capabilities. Elena's ongoing tactical briefings revealed the full scope of her professional knowledge and experience. Her recommendations for defensive operations demonstrated understanding of intelligence doctrine that impressed even experienced professionals. Phase 3 operations typically involve active probing of defensive responses, Elena explained, her tactical analysis guiding their preparation for escalating hostile activities. Expect systematic testing of our security procedures using coordinated penetration attempts. Staff Sergeant Williams, now operating under Elena's tactical guidance, reported successful implementation of her defensive strategies. "Ma'am, enhanced communication security protocols have eliminated intelligence compromise vulnerabilities." Elena's response demonstrated satisfaction with their defensive improvements while maintaining focus on evolving threats. Excellent progress. However, professional intelligence operations adapt rapidly. Continuous improvement is essential for maintaining security advantages. The broader implications of Elena's mission at FOB Sentinel became clear as her assessment report was transmitted to higher command levels. Her evaluation of base security vulnerabilities would influence defensive preparations at coalition installations throughout the region. Colonel Thompson's final briefing with Elena revealed the full scope of her professional assessment and its implications for future operations. Your security evaluation will reshape our defensive doctrine across multiple operational theaters. Elena's response reflected satisfaction with successful mission completion while maintaining focus on ongoing security requirements. The primary objective was identifying and addressing systemic vulnerabilities. Today's threat provided opportunity to validate defensive improvements under actual operational conditions. The hostile surveillance team's eventual withdrawal confirmed the effectiveness of Elena's counterintelligence strategies. Enhanced security measures had successfully neutralized their intelligence-gathering operation, while providing valuable insights into enemy capabilities and methods. Morrison's final interaction with Elena carried profound gratitude and respect that represented complete transformation of their relationship. "Ma'am, I want to thank you for the professional development opportunity. This experience has fundamentally improved my analytical capabilities." Elena's response demonstrated the kind of leadership that builds lasting professional relationships. "Captain, your adaptation to changing circumstances and willingness to learn from experience demonstrate the qualities of effective military leadership. Apply these lessons to future challenges." The formal conclusion of Elena's assessment mission at FOB Sentinel was marked by her transition from covert mail distribution specialist to acknowledged senior intelligence analyst. Her professional cover had been maintained successfully until tactical circumstances required revealing her true capabilities. Lieutenant Commander Blake's final evaluation of Elena's performance reflected profound professional respect. "Your analytical capabilities and tactical expertise have permanently enhanced our intelligence operations. The security improvements you implemented will benefit future operations." Elena's acknowledgement of Blake's evaluation carried satisfaction with successful mission completion. The primary objective was strengthening coalition intelligence security. Today's events demonstrated both vulnerabilities and effective countermeasures. The psychological impact of Elena's revelation extended far beyond immediate tactical considerations to encompass fundamental changes in how FOB Sentinel personnel approached intelligence analysis and personnel assessment. The experience had provided profound lessons about assumptions, capabilities, and professional competence. Morrison's transformation represented the most dramatic change, but every person who had interacted with Elena during her 6-month assignment carried away enhanced understanding of the dangers of underestimating professional capabilities based on apparent roles or superficial observations. Elena's final tactical briefing prepared FOB Sentinel personnel for ongoing security requirements while emphasizing the lessons learned from their experience with systematic intelligence compromise. Professional threats require professional responses. Continuous vigilance and adaptive strategies are essential for maintaining security advantages. The formal transfer of Elena to her next assignment was marked by unprecedented respect from every level of command at FOB Sentinel. Her professional competence had earned recognition that transcended normal military hierarchies. Colonel Thompson's final evaluation reflected profound appreciation for Elena's contributions to base security and personnel development. "Your mission has strengthened our defensive capabilities while providing invaluable professional development opportunities for our personnel." Elena's response carried satisfaction with successful mission completion and confidence in the enhanced capabilities she was leaving behind. The security improvements and personnel development achieved here will contribute to broader coalition intelligence effectiveness. The lasting impact of Elena's assignment to FOB Sentinel extended far beyond immediate security improvements to encompass fundamental changes in how intelligence operations were conducted and personnel capabilities were assessed throughout the coalition command structure. Morrison's ongoing application of lessons learned from Elena's mentorship demonstrated permanent enhancement of his professional capabilities. His approach to intelligence analysis and personnel assessment had been fundamentally improved by the experience of working under her tactical guidance. The broader strategic implications of Elena's intelligence assessment influenced defensive preparations at coalition installations throughout the region. Her identification of systematic intelligence threats and effective countermeasures provided critical capabilities for protecting operational security. Elena's professional reputation within the intelligence community was enhanced by successful completion of her assessment mission at FOB Sentinel. Her tactical expertise and leadership capabilities had been validated under actual operational conditions. The conclusion of Elena's assignment marked the beginning of enhanced security capabilities at FOB Sentinel that would benefit future operations. The defensive improvements she implemented provided lasting protection against sophisticated intelligence threats. Morrison's final report on the experience reflected profound professional growth and enhanced analytical capabilities. Working under Elena's tactical guidance provided invaluable insights into professional intelligence operations and effective leadership principles. The legacy of Elena's assignment to FOB Sentinel would influence intelligence operations and personnel development throughout the coalition command structure. Her demonstration of professional competence disguised as routine administrative work provided lasting lessons about assumptions, capabilities, and the importance of recognizing professional excellence regardless of its apparent form. Elena's transition to her next assignment carried with her the satisfaction of successful mission completion and enhanced reputation within the intelligence community. Her tactical expertise and leadership capabilities had been proven under challenging operational conditions. The final assessment of Elena's impact at FOB Sentinel reflected unanimous recognition of her professional excellence and the lasting improvements she had achieved in base security and personnel capabilities. Her mission had succeeded in strengthening coalition intelligence operations while providing invaluable professional development opportunities. The enduring influence of Elena's work would continue to benefit coalition operations long after her departure from FOB Sentinel. The security improvements, tactical innovations, and personnel development she had achieved provided lasting enhancement to intelligence capabilities throughout the region. Morrison's continuing application of Elena's mentorship represented permanent improvement in his professional capabilities and approach to intelligence analysis. The experience had fundamentally enhanced his effectiveness as a military leader and intelligence professional. Elena Rodriguez had completed her mission with distinction, leaving behind enhanced security capabilities and professionally developed personnel who would carry forward the lessons learned from their experience with true professional excellence disguised as routine administrative work. The aftermath of Elena's revelation sent ripples through every level of the coalition command structure, as her comprehensive security assessment reached intelligence offices across 3 continents. Her detailed analysis of systematic vulnerabilities and forward operating base protocols would reshape defensive doctrine for years to come, but the immediate impact at FOB Sentinel was both profound and personal. Morrison's psychological transformation had been so complete that other personnel struggled to reconcile his current demeanor with the arrogant officer they had known for months. His approach to intelligence briefings had become collaborative rather than domineering. His assessment of personnel capabilities now included healthy skepticism about surface appearances, and his treatment of civilian contractors reflected newfound respect for professional competence regardless of its packaging. The morning briefing 3 days after Elena's departure was conducted with protocols she had established during her brief period of acknowledged command authority. Enhanced security measures had become standard operating procedure, counter-surveillance techniques were integrated into daily operations, and communication security had been upgraded to levels that prevented intelligence compromise. Lieutenant Commander Blake addressed the assembled personnel with acknowledgement of the fundamental changes Elena's presence had created in their operational effectiveness. The security improvements implemented under Elena Rodriguez's guidance have eliminated vulnerabilities that existed for months without detection. Our defensive capabilities have been enhanced beyond recognition. Morrison's contribution to the briefing reflected his transformed approach to intelligence analysis and personnel assessment. The experience of working under Elena's tactical guidance provided insights into professional capabilities that exist beyond obvious indicators. Our evaluation procedures now include assessment of analytical thinking rather than relying solely on credentials and apparent experience. Staff Sergeant Williams, whose own attitudes had been adjusted by witnessing Morrison's dramatic transformation, reported on the ongoing effectiveness of Elena's counter-surveillance strategies. Hostile reconnaissance activity in our operational area has decreased significantly since implementation of variable patrol schedules and enhanced detection protocols. Corporal Jackson's technical analysis confirmed the lasting impact of Elena's communication security improvements. Signal intelligence indicates that hostile surveillance teams have been unable to compromise our upgraded encryption protocols. Their intelligence-gathering effectiveness has been neutralized. The broader implications of Elena's assessment were becoming evident as similar security improvements were implemented at coalition installations throughout the region. Her identification of systematic vulnerabilities had prompted comprehensive review of defensive procedures across multiple operational theaters. Colonel Thompson's communication with higher command levels revealed the scope of Elena's influence on coalition intelligence operations. The DIA has requested detailed briefings on the security improvements implemented at FOB Sentinel. Elena Rodriguez's assessment methodology is being adopted as standard protocol for evaluating forward operating base vulnerabilities. The psychological impact on Morrison continued to manifest in enhanced professional performance that impressed his colleagues and superiors. His analytical reports demonstrated improved accuracy and depth, his leadership style had become more collaborative and effective, and his assessment of personnel capabilities reflected sophisticated understanding of hidden competencies. Morrison's personal reflection on his experience with Elena revealed the depth of his professional growth. I spent months dismissing someone whose analytical capabilities exceeded my own by orders of magnitude. The experience taught me that professional competence can exist in forms that challenge every assumption about expertise and authority. The training programs developed based on Elena's recommendations were being implemented throughout the coalition command structure. Her emphasis on pattern recognition, assumption questioning, and comprehensive threat assessment had become integral components of intelligence training curricula. Lieutenant Commander Blake's ongoing application of Elena's analytical methodologies had enhanced the intelligence section's effectiveness beyond measurable parameters. Elena's approach to threat assessment has fundamentally improved our capability to detect sophisticated intelligence operations. We're identifying patterns that would have remained invisible using previous analytical frameworks. The counterintelligence capabilities Elena had established at FOB Sentinel were providing insights into hostile intelligence operations across the broader regional theater. Her defensive strategies had transformed the base from a vulnerable target into an effective counter-surveillance platform. Morrison's continuing development under Elena's influence was evident in his mentorship of junior personnel. He had begun teaching the analytical principles she had demonstrated, emphasizing the importance of questioning assumptions and recognizing professional competence regardless of its apparent form. The technical innovations Elena had implemented for communication security were being studied by cybersecurity specialists throughout the coalition intelligence community. Her practical solutions to complex security challenges demonstrated understanding of enemy capabilities that extended far beyond theoretical knowledge. Staff Sergeant Williams reported on the psychological impact Elena's presence had created among international coalition partners. Military personnel from allied nations have requested information about the analytical training that produced Elena's capabilities. Her professional competence has enhanced respect for American intelligence operations. The strategic assessment Elena had provided regarding systematic intelligence threats was influencing defensive planning across multiple regions. Her identification of coordinated hostile intelligence operations had prompted enhanced security cooperation between coalition partners. Morrison's final evaluation period reflected dramatic improvement in every aspect of his professional performance. His analytical accuracy had increased, his leadership effectiveness had been enhanced, and his ability to identify and develop personnel capabilities had been fundamentally transformed. The formal recognition Elena received from the Defense Intelligence Agency acknowledged her successful completion of one of the most challenging assessment missions in recent intelligence history. Her ability to maintain professional cover while conducting comprehensive security evaluation had set new standards for covert operational excellence. Colonel Thompson's retrospective analysis of Elena's mission revealed the sophisticated planning that had enabled her successful assessment of FOB Sentinel's vulnerabilities. The decision to position a senior intelligence analyst in administrative cover demonstrated remarkable strategic thinking. Her access to all aspects of base operations provided comprehensive evaluation that would have been impossible through conventional assessment methods. The ongoing effectiveness of Elena's security improvements was validated through systematic testing that confirmed the elimination of previously exploitable vulnerabilities. Hostile intelligence operations that had successfully compromised coalition communications for months were now unable to penetrate enhanced security protocols. Morrison's transformation had become a case study in professional development that was being examined by leadership training programs throughout the military. His evolution from arrogant dismissiveness to collaborative respect demonstrated the profound impact that exposure to true professional excellence could create. The analytical methodologies Elena had demonstrated were being incorporated into intelligence training curricula at advanced professional development schools. Her approach to pattern recognition and threat assessment had proven effective under actual operational conditions. Lieutenant Commander Blake's continuing application of Elena's strategic insights was producing intelligence assessments that impressed senior command levels. Elena's analytical framework has enhanced our capability to predict and counter sophisticated threats. Our intelligence products now include strategic depth that was previously unattainable. The legacy of Elena's assignment to FOB Sentinel extended beyond immediate security improvements to encompass fundamental changes in how coalition forces approached intelligence operations and personnel assessment. Her demonstration of professional excellence disguised as routine administrative work had provided lasting lessons about assumptions, capabilities, and recognition of competence. Morrison's ongoing mentorship of junior officers reflected his commitment to applying the lessons Elena had taught through her example. His emphasis on analytical thinking and assumption questioning was producing enhanced performance throughout his chain of command. The international recognition Elena's work had received was enhancing American prestige within coalition intelligence circles. Her professional competence had demonstrated the depth and sophistication of American intelligence capabilities to allied partners who were implementing similar analytical methodologies. The technical innovations Elena had developed for counter-surveillance operations were being adapted for use in multiple operational environments. Her practical solutions to complex intelligence challenges had proven effective across diverse tactical situations. Staff Sergeant Williams's development under Elena's indirect influence was producing enhanced analytical capabilities that impressed his superiors. Working in an environment shaped by Elena's professional standards has elevated the performance of every person in the intelligence section. The strategic implications of Elena's threat assessment were continuing to influence defensive planning, as coalition forces adapted to sophisticated intelligence threats she had identified. Her analysis of systematic hostile reconnaissance had prompted enhanced security cooperation across multiple theaters. Morrison's final report on his experience working under Elena's guidance became required reading for senior intelligence officers throughout the coalition command structure. His insights into professional development and recognition of hidden capabilities were influencing leadership training programs. The comprehensive security review Elena's assessment had prompted was revealing vulnerabilities at installations throughout the coalition operational area. Her analytical methodology was being applied to identify and address systematic weaknesses that had existed undetected for extended periods. The psychological impact of Elena's revelation continued to influence personnel attitudes throughout FOB Sentinel as the story of her true identity spread through informal communication channels. The experience had created lasting awareness of the dangers of underestimating professional capabilities based on superficial observations. Lieutenant Commander Blake's integration of Elena's analytical principles into standard intelligence procedures was producing consistent improvement in threat detection and assessment accuracy. Elena's methodology has become the foundation for all our analytical work. The enhancement in our capabilities has been dramatic and permanent. The training programs based on Elena's demonstration of professional excellence were being implemented at intelligence schools throughout the coalition command structure. Her example of maintaining effective cover while conducting sophisticated analysis had become a model for covert operational excellence. Morrison's continuing evolution as a leader was evident in his collaborative approach to intelligence operations and his enhanced ability to identify and develop hidden capabilities in subordinate personnel. The lessons Elena had taught through example were producing lasting improvements in his professional effectiveness. The formal documentation of Elena's assessment methodology was being distributed to intelligence professionals across multiple agencies, as her analytical framework proved effective for identifying sophisticated threats. Her approach to pattern recognition and systematic evaluation was becoming standard protocol. The strategic insights Elena had provided regarding hostile intelligence capabilities were continuing to influence defensive planning as coalition forces prepared for sophisticated threats she had identified. Her analysis of enemy operational patterns was being applied to counterintelligence operations across multiple regions. The lasting impact of Elena's mission extended far beyond the immediate security improvements at FOB Sentinel to encompass fundamental changes in how coalition intelligence operations approached threat assessment and personnel evaluation. Her professional excellence had created ripple effects throughout the intelligence community. Morrison's transformation from dismissive arrogance to collaborative leadership had become an example of professional development that was being studied by leadership training programs. His willingness to learn from experience and adapt his approach demonstrated the growth potential that existed within military command structures. The recognition Elena received from international intelligence partners reflected the global impact of her analytical capabilities and professional competence. Her work had enhanced American prestige within coalition circles while providing practical solutions to complex security challenges. The technical innovations Elena had implemented for communication security were being studied and adapted by cybersecurity specialists throughout the intelligence community. Her practical understanding of hostile capabilities had produced defensive measures that were proving effective across diverse operational environments. Staff Sergeant Williams's ongoing application of analytical principles Elena had demonstrated was producing enhanced intelligence products that impressed senior command levels. The indirect influence of her professional standards was elevating performance throughout the intelligence section. The comprehensive threat assessment Elena had provided was continuing to influence strategic planning as coalition forces prepared for coordinated hostile operations she had identified. Her analysis of systematic intelligence gathering had prompted enhanced defensive cooperation between allied partners. Morrison's final evaluation reflected the profound professional growth that had resulted from his experience working under Elena's guidance. His enhanced analytical capabilities, improved leadership effectiveness, and sophisticated understanding of personnel assessment represented permanent improvement in his professional competence. The legacy of Elena Rodriguez's assignment to FOB Sentinel would continue to influence coalition intelligence operations for years to come. Her demonstration of professional excellence disguised as routine administrative work had provided lasting lessons about recognizing competence, questioning assumptions, and the dangers of underestimating capabilities based on superficial appearances. The enduring impact of her mission extended beyond immediate security improvements to encompass fundamental changes in how intelligence professionals approached their work. Elena's example had created lasting enhancement in analytical capabilities, threat assessment methodologies, and recognition of professional excellence, regardless of its apparent packaging. Morrison's continuing development as a leader reflected his commitment to applying the lessons Elena had taught through her remarkable example. His transformation from arrogant dismissiveness to collaborative respect had become a model for professional growth that was inspiring similar development throughout the military command structure. The story of Elena Rodriguez and her impact on FOB Sentinel had become more than an account of successful intelligence operations. It represented a profound lesson about the dangers of assumptions, the importance of recognizing hidden capabilities, and the transformative power of true professional excellence revealed under the most unlikely circumstances. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.